So the UFC just said, oh, nice announcement, Francis. Here's our one. And they went ahead and just announced on a Dana White live stream, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2, the rematch as the main event of UFC 291 for the BMF belt. I don't like the BMF belt, but that is an amazing matchup, and both of them are very worthy of that BMF belt as well. We've also got Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira as the co-main event on that card as well, July 29th, Saturday, on pay-per-view, UFC 291. Paulo Costa versus Aliskerov is also on that card. Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green is also on that card. Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland is also on that card. And also they announced Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley. And Yan Xiaonan is not getting a title shot at strawweight. Zhang Weili is taking on Amanda Lemos. Let's talk about this situation. So, now that Masvidal has retired, the BMF belt is back on the line, and it's Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2 as the main event of UFC 291. This is a massive, massive fight, and in all honesty, I don't mind it being a main event. The one thing that annoys me, I don't like that cringy-ass BMF belt. It really does frustrate me. It makes the sport like WWE. I don't like it, but I will say they are both deserving of a BMF belt. They are BMFs. So it's not like they're just doing it for a random matchup to make it an excuse to have it as a main event of a pay-per-view and have a title fight on the line. These guys are deserving. Justin Gaethje, BMF. Dustin Poirier, BMF. Massive, massive matchup. The winner's definitely going to get a title shot after, if Beneil Dariush beats Charles Oliveira, he gets his title shot against Islam Makhachev. But this is a massive matchup at lightweight, dude. I knew this was going to get made. I just didn't know when they were going to make it. I actually kind of said that it would be on this card, but I thought there would be an actual title fight to main event it instead. But this is how they get a main event of a title fight in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's Poirier versus Gaethje. In Salt Lake City, I don't know. Justin Gaethje, I'm going to go with Justin Gaethje over Dustin Poirier in this matchup. I think both of them can keep a really good pace, but you've got to consider this again. Justin Gaethje trains at Team Elevation. And that's where Kamaru Usman trained for his fight against Leon Edwards the first time, where he was basically the only one on the entire card that didn't really show signs of gassing out. And that must be something that comes into consideration here when it comes for this matchup of Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. I also believe that Justin Gaethje is just a little bit hungrier right now, and that's something that we need to talk about. I mean, Dustin Poirier has made a whole bunch of money by fighting Conor McGregor. I know Justin Gaethje got a bunch of money as well by saving that card of UFC 249 against Tony Ferguson, and then getting that massive Khabib fight and getting pay-per-view shares as well. But I think Gaethje is a bit hungrier than Dustin Poirier right now. I liked his performance against Rafael Fiziev. I did think the first 2 rounds were very close, but to even do that against an up-and-comer in Rafael Fiziev, I think is very impressive, and much more impressive than a win against Michael Chandler, who just likes to throw away fights at this point. So I think Justin Gaethje will defeat Dustin Poirier, and in a 5-rounder, I think it favors him. In a 3-rounder, on the regular main card of a pay-per-view, I would pick Dustin Poirier probably in a 3-rounder, but I think Gaethje has perfected his game a little bit. He's a completely different fighter than the one that fought Poirier the first time. He's changed some things up a little bit, and I didn't think he did, but he's proven that to me over time. And now we've got a new Gaethje, a little bit more patient, powerful, still has the ability to push a pace, but is a little bit more, correct about the way that he does it. And Dustin Poirier is a bit of the same fighter that fought Gaethje the first time. So I do think a lot of this fight is in favor of Justin Gaethje. The fact that it is at altitude as well when he trains at Team Elevation, that is going to be a massive advantage in this 5-round matchup at Salt Lake City. So I am going to go with Justin Gaethje, but that is a crazy bit of news for the BMF belt. We then move on to the co-main event of that card, Jan Blachowicz versus Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira might be coming back a bit too soon. That's all I'm going to say about this. This is at the end of July. Dude basically just got knocked out in April. So he's taking an immediate turnaround to fight Jan Blachowicz. Now, I am kind of okay with it because he's moving up a weight class. If he was trying to make middleweight again and coming back at middleweight this soon, then I would be very worried for him. But he still got put out cold by Israel Adesanya, and now he's going on to take on Jan Blachowicz at light heavyweight. He has a solid chance, by the way. But why wouldn't he bulk himself up into that light heavyweight division? Maybe it's because he's already big enough to be a light heavyweight, and he could still beat Jan Blachowicz here, but I could see Jan Blachowicz catching him again because he's taken a quick turnaround. I can see Jan Blachowicz implementing his grappling here and doing that to get his title shot in the light heavyweight division against the winner of Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prohaska. That could end up happening. I don't know what's going on with Magomed Ankalaev now. I guess it's going to be him versus Rakic in October in Abu Dhabi. Maybe that's what's going to be happening next for Magomed Ankalaev, who's kind of been passed up out of this whole situation. Maybe they offered a fight with him and Alex Pereira and he turned it down, so they rewarded Jan Blachowicz with the fight instead. But I love the storyline here, because if Alex Pereira can get a win over Jan Blachowicz, who, let's face it, is getting up there in age, if he can get a win over Jan Blachowicz and a knockout win at that as well, he's beaten the guy who beat Israel Adesanya. You know what I mean? In the UFC at light heavyweight. And then when Adesanya eventually moves up, if he does win against the winner of Whittaker Duplessis, which will be Whittaker, let's be real, then we have a massive storyline on our hands, and it just gets juicier and juicier. But Alex Pereira, man, very quick turnaround. I don't know how I feel about that, because if he's fighting at the end of July, he's basically going to be in training camp again in 2 weeks. But light heavyweight was his division. He's naturally a light heavyweight guy, and he was draining himself to absolute depletion to fight in the middleweight division. Now, he isn't going to have as much of a size advantage, but he is still going to have a bit of frame on Jan Blachowicz here. I just don't know. Is Jan Blachowicz going to be good enough to beat an Alex Pereira? Is he going to be able to check the leg kicks? There's so many questions about the matchup. I need more time to investigate and break it down. But what an amazing matchup as a co-main event of that card. I'm glad the UFC's done this. Now, was this done? I don't think they announced this just because Ngannou made an announcement, but I think the date of it, Ngannou should not have given a pre-date to the date that he was going to make his massive announcement. Because maybe as soon as he said, hey, on the 16th of May, I'm going to make an announcement, the UFC just scrambled to make this fight card. But we've also got more fights on the card that need to be talked about. We've got Paulo Costa versus Ikram Aliskerov. Why? I don't know. But I guess it really could help build the potential Paulo Costa versus Khamzat Chimaev fight in October. I do think Paulo Costa would beat Ikram Aliskerov. I don't think Aliskerov's going to be able to out-grapple him. And I also don't believe that Aliskerov's going to win that fight on the feet either. I think Paulo Costa has a way better chin than Phil Hawes. And I think he's got better stand-up as well, better durability. And I think he has better takedown defense. Although Phil Hawes does have great takedown defense as well. I think that is a good matchup for Paulo Costa. And also so early in the career of Ikram Aliskerov, he got a big win by KO, and immediately he gets jumped against a top contender. I don't know what's going on in the UFC. I'm just going to call it what it is. Dagestani privilege right now, man. What's going on? Absolute privilege for these guys. And no one's calling it out. Abbas Magomedov won one fight in the UFC. He's fighting Sean Strickland, top 10 contender at middleweight. Ikram Aliskerov has won one fight in the UFC against someone that was coming off a loss, by the way, in Phil Hawes, and he's now fighting Paulo Costa, number 5 in the world. Crazy. Maybe it's the only person that would take on Paulo Costa in this time frame. I just know they could have done Paulo Costa, Sean Strickland on this card, and then Aliskerov versus Abbas Magomedov. They would have accepted all of those fights always in those matchups. But Paulo Costa, Ikram Aliskerov builds up the story for the Chimaev fight. Maybe if Aliskerov wins, they could do Aliskerov versus Chimaev in October. That could be a situation. But this is a massive fight. I just think it's wasted. You need someone who's going to go back and forth with Paulo, and they've kind of risked that Khamzat matchup that's such a perfect pay-per-view draw of a fight, just to have this fight in the meantime, I guess because Paulo Costa wanted to stay active and he said that as well. Maybe we'll see a Khamzat Chimaev announcement at some point. Although now I doubt it, because this is at the end of July and Chimaev can't fight in Boston in the middle of August and then fight in October. So I guess we're waiting until October for Khamzat Chimaev, but this is a massive fight in the meantime to help build that one up, and I'm glad that Costa gets to stay a bit more active. We move on to another fight on the card, Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. Amazing matchup that I didn't even think about because I thought Bobby Green obviously wasn't going to be in this current situation that he's in with the headbutt. I think what they've done here has been like, okay, Bobby Green, you had an accidental clash of heads, okay, which may or may not have been accidental, but either way, Bobby Green wasn't happy about it whatsoever. So now what the UFC is going to do is they're just going to say, here's Tony Ferguson, dude. A nice matchup for you. A great matchup of two OGs of the fight game. Massive matchup for a pay-per-view as well, and a great matchup for Tony Ferguson because it's going to be a striking match with a guy who doesn't have too much power in his hands. Let's be real about Bobby Green. Although he's a very good striker, he's not really a finisher on the feet, so this will be sort of a battle of who can win a decision against each other. Maybe we see Bobby Green completely light him up and KO him. That would be a very sad sight, but I think there is a chance here for Tony Ferguson. I will be picking Bobby Green to win, but this is an absolutely massive matchup on this pay-per-view card that I'm definitely going to be looking forward to, and I think it's a great one for Tony Ferguson as well, because I was worried about what they were going to do with him. I thought maybe they would go with Paddy Pimblett. That could be a big fight. That's a definitely winnable fight for him because Pimblett's trash, and they could also maybe go in the direction of a couple of these legends at welterweight, like a Matt Brown or a Nick Diaz after he fought Nate Diaz, who knows, and then maybe I thought, maybe they could do another matchup at lightweight instead against a lower ranked guy that's been around, but I didn't think of Bobby Green. But now I'm all in for this matchup because Bobby Green versus... I was thinking the winner of Bobby Green, Jared Gordon, was going to be next for Paddy Pimblett. You know what I mean? Because it made some sense. But seeing as that ended in no contest and it's all weird, I guess Bobby Green gets rewarded for a headbutt, and now he's taking on Tony Ferguson in the lightweight division, which is very good news because it ends Tony Ferguson's absolutely moronic stints in the welterweight division that made no sense whatsoever. Great matchup on the card. Another fight on the card, Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland right back in there again after fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio. Chiesa was supposed to be fighting not Sean Brady. He was supposed to be fighting Li Jingliang, I believe, on the UFC 287 card not too long ago, maybe the June pay-per-view, I'm not too sure, but he was supposed to be fighting Li Jingliang on a pay-per-view card. Might have even been the Jones versus Garn card, who knows. One of those types of cards though, but Chiesa, eventually Li Jingliang had to pull out of that fight, and Chiesa wasn't looking for some short notice fill-in opponent because he wanted to prepare for someone, and now it's him versus Kevin Holland. And I don't mind Chiesa's chances against Kevin Holland because he is a grappler. He's a big dude as well, and Kevin Holland does have some weaknesses in his grappling. I just believe that at welterweight, Holland will be able to survive Michael Chiesa on the ground if a Neil Magny can. And I also believe that Kevin Holland is going to have a massive chance once we get into the second and third round to catch Chiesa on the feet. So I could actually see Kevin Holland getting taken down by Michael Chiesa in the first round, surviving a couple of submission positions, landing some shots off of his back, getting back up at one point and having a flurry, and then getting taken down again by Chiesa, and Chiesa maybe failing an arm triangle at the end of the round. Round two, I think Chiesa will start taking him down again. Holland scrambles a bit, does some damage off of his back, escapes a submission or a back take, ends up on his feet, landing big shots on top of Chiesa. Chiesa's starting to gas out a little bit, and then maybe a third round finish from Kevin Holland will be in order later on as that fight goes on. We also have an announcement though of UFC 292, which is now absolutely guaranteed for Boston, which is big news because it's always a good card when they go there. The main event is to be Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley. So O'Malley and the UFC got what they wanted. Aljo will be immediately back into a training camp, immediately cutting weight again to try and fight Sean O'Malley on very quick turnaround. So respect for Aljamain Sterling getting right back in there. I think he also realizes that he's kind of coming towards the end of his prime right now. So he needs to sort of get these massive fights in while he can. He's not towards the end of his prime, but he still has a lot that he wants to do. So he kind of needs to get this fight out the way. And if he does, it'll be August, and Volk's fighting in July. He could get that super fight against Volk at the end of the year if he plays his cards right. So this is a massive matchup. I do think Aljo's going to choke him out in round one, but a massive main event for UFC Boston, of course, with a good card underneath it, because so far the card underneath it is Zhang Weili versus Amanda Lemos in the co-main event, which is an interesting title fight to make because I thought they were going to go down the road of Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. I thought that was the big move that they were going to make because I thought, you know what, they're both Chinese. Maybe they'll do a UFC Fight Night China, but they're going to add a nice little co-main event to the O'Malley versus Sterling card. I just hope that they add a bunch of other big fights on that card as well, like an Edson Barboza versus a Calvin Kattar, maybe even. I know that, when are they going to do Jamal Hill, Yuri Prohaska then? Maybe on the MSG card in November. That's a long time to wait for that, because I don't see him doing it in Abu Dhabi, and I do not see them doing it. Maybe they will do it in Abu Dhabi so that they can have a backup of Magomed Ankalaev against someone else on that card. Who knows what they're going to end up doing, but massive, massive stakes. And I love this announcement from the UFC. They kind of maybe did it just to sort of throw off Ngannou's announcement, because this is now the biggest news in the combat sports world. I know Ngannou signing to PFL was big, but the UFC literally just took a big steamy poo all over that announcement with these recent ones that they just came out with. BMF belt back on the line. Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2. Absolutely crazy matchup, dude. Absolutely crazy matchup. And that is massive in the lightweight division. And then Alex Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz. I could see Blachowicz getting a takedown and smoking him, man. Because I know Jan Blachowicz is thinking right now, I'm an old guy. I need to get my belt back. I don't want to lose as a non-champion. I still want to make some money here. I can wrestle. And I'm better at wrestling than Israel Adesanya by far. Now I'm going to wrestle against Alex Pereira. He could run into a flying knee while he does that, because he's a lot slower than some of the other wrestlers that have tried to take down Alex Pereira. But I don't like the matchup for Jan Blachowicz. This quick of a turnaround. But if Pereira beats Jan, it is on. If he beats Jan, title shot. Sorry, Magomed Ankalaev. Are you the next opponent for Ngannou at PFL? See you later, dude. No one wants your boring ass as champ. See you, Ankalaev. Never again, bitch. But then we move on to another bit of information, which is, of course, Costa Aliskerov. Weird matchup, but great UFC 291 card. Absolutely amazing. I don't know why Costa's being given an unranked opponent here. Surely there was a ranked opponent ready to go. Oh, well. Ferguson versus Green. Massive matchup as well. Absolutely massive matchup. At altitude is going to be interesting, because maybe that will favour Tony Ferguson, because we know his conditioning is never bad. But I just think he looked so geriatric against Nate Diaz. Both of them look so bad. I've got to take Bobby Green to win. And then Chiesa Holland. And I'm just like, what else is going to be on the prelims of that card? It doesn't even need prelims. But if it does get some prelims, that could be looking at like a really good, solid card of the year candidate so far. And that just goes to show how bad the pay-per-view cards have been this year. But UFC 287 was very good. Very, very good stuff, dude. We've got one other fight on that card. CJ Vergara, Vinicius Salvador. Whatever. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. Crazy news. You know what, Ngannou? Thank you for signing to PFL. Because even if I don't agree with the business decisions you made to go over there and feel like you could have got more out of your decision making, at least you're putting pressure on the UFC to absolutely crush everything you say or do in the headlines. And that's good for the UFC. Goodbye, Toodle Pip and UFC fans. See you later.